You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Greetings, my Rainbow Warriors. I'm coming to you today from Goa, India. I've been hanging out here for a couple of weeks. I'm teaching some workshops. I'm planning some retreats. Lots of exciting things cooking here and so many beautiful people. Watching lots of sunsets, doing lots of meditation, working on my podcast right here for you today. So I hope you enjoy this interview with the amazing Sacha Stone. Sacha is a former rock musician and founder of the NewEarth Project, the planetary sovereignty, consciousness, and sustainability movement, convening itself as the world's first extraterritorial nation of peoples from all cultures and faiths. New Earth nationals are people who choose to step out of the invisible contracts with corporate nation-states and into a new covenant of fellowship amongst all of humankind via a declaration of sovereignty. The nation exists under its own cognizance, as its own court of record, and is backed up by its own law commission, law academy, and a growing army of law experts around the world. The nation is launching a zero-point economy and has recently launched Zero Point Time, ZPT, as a unified time signature. Sacha Stone established Humankind as a non-sectarian organization serving as architect and facilitator of global initiatives impacting sustainability, natural justice, and social ecology. It's a focus platform for experts in economics, media, education, science and technology, research and advocacy, arts and culture, and diplomacy and conflict resolution. Humanitad's Law Commission is active on the world stage in human rights and natural justice. It continues to incubate medical cures and technological breakthroughs while challenging established frameworks of governance which serve vested interests ahead of the interests of humanity and a fragile planet. As a nonprofit organization, it functions in the service of people of the world beyond the constraints of systems and ideologies devised by men and institutions which seek power and wealth as the measure by which all else follows. Whilst outspoken against the centralization of power and of multilateral institutional manipulation in order to enter the multilateral arena and attempt to engage with the mechanics of centralized power, Sacha Stone produced the MDG Awards ceremony on the floor of the General Assembly at the United Nations in 2009. It was at this event where Archbishop Desmond Tutu propounded the word Ubuntu, which is fast becoming a major pattern for international socio-ecological reform. As Director General for the UNIGO Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Organization in 2010, Sacha founded and launched the Exemplar Zero Initiative, the pioneering international initiative safe harbors and develops breakthrough sustainable technologies and solutions, as well as sustainable economic modeling. Sacha currently chairs the annual Global Breakthrough Energy Movement panels of scientists and innovators, a pioneering movement which is leading the world towards a free energy solution. In 2011, Sacha founded the NWO Natural World Organization, an intergovernmental organization promulgating accountability and transparency in worldwide governance, a multilateral organization which directly challenges globalism and collectivism. Sacha Stone's socio-political writings and the State of the World report serve as harsh critiques on the disease of globalization and covert elitism. At the same time, he emphasizes the need for a conscious return back into the true zero point contained within the quanta of the collective human heart, in order for us to qualify and participate fully in the next great step in our human and planetary evolution. Sacha says, if we are to manifest sustainability and foster an energy and socio-ecological revolution in our times, we must acknowledge that participatory consciousness is the chief factor. Technology and consciousness are intimately connected, and it's time for us to engage that conversation without fear of scorn from a world still largely trapped in linear logic and limitations of the conditioned mind. Now, I met Sacha in Bali at his NewEarth Haven when he hosted the first NewEarth Festival. The people that gathered for this event were truly visionaries, and I was honored to present my conscious eating talk and subsequently to be invited onto the faculty of the NewEarth University's School of Health and Wellness. Listen to my episode with Nancy Ash to learn more about the NewEarth University. Now, Sacha is not shy. He has strong opinions and an ability to communicate them effectively. I see him as a passionate visionary activist working on the daily to help create a new and better world. He dropped so many deep concepts during this conversation that it really took me a while to digest it, and listening to it again now to edit it, I'm reminded that this man is spearheading the work of truly bringing into tangible form the new earth so many of us want to see. And as you'll hear, he's not taking credit for all of it. He wants everyone to participate collectively for the new earth to be birthed by all of us. I hope you find this episode inspiring and allow yourself to vision for yourself how you can participate in birthing the new earth, and then get to it. Remember my guiding quote for this show that I mentioned in episode 1? A vision is but a dream. A task without a vision is drudgery. A vision and a task is the hope of the world. We all need to get to work, my rainbow warriors. Let this be your nudge today to put some energy into creating the world that you want to see. Enjoy, and namaste. Sacha Stone, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thank you. Thank you for being my guest.
Yes, we are each other's guests. Yeah. Beautiful. It's the co-creation. It's the creative expansion. The first day that we arrived, you said this is a social experiment and we are but a humble petri dish in the rice fields of Bali.
Yeah, that's how I see it. And I hope I never become arrogant to not view it in that way, because it must be an unfoldment process, and it must never arrive at any finite state. That would determine a failure as far as I'm concerned. So very happy with navigating the unknown when it comes to this particular social experiment.
Mm-hmm. And so you're the founder of the New Earth.
You know, it's curious.
Is that accurate?
It more or less, but I'm becoming almost resentful of that notion, because it folds in the wizardry, the genius, the brilliance of so many people who have put in every bit as much as I have over the last few years. But there were essentially a handful of us who kicked the ball onto the field. Certainly, I spent a few years prior to that envisioning the kicking of that ball onto the field, and that's all that we're seeing here is a collective unfoldment.
And we're talking about a group of visionaries essentially that have been drawn to this festival, to this event, to this land. Agreed? Yes,
and the beautiful thing, all of them brought together in the unified context of applying that metric of art and beauty and consciousness over time, money and fear, which is the drum that we've been beating for the last few years. But this is the first time that we've manifested that in an immersive experience which has gone on for best part of a week, and by best accounts is about to become an ongoing exercise, because I was looking at the festival ground today and thinking, wow, I mean, there is no reason why we can't continue that festival ground and continue to build it and allow this just to be an open season. So I'll begin the process tomorrow or the next day with our local banjar and local friends and see if we can create a scenario which is actually ongoing, because there's no reason why we should terminate anything at the closing ceremony tomorrow.
Right. The closing ceremony is tomorrow, at which you proposed you were going to unveil a new free energy technology. Right?
Well, that makes you the first journalist to make that announcement to an audience. But yes, I did say that, I believe yesterday or the day before, I made the first early announcement that on Sunday at the closing ceremony we plan to unveil Overunity 0-point technology for the first time. My understanding is that it's the first time in history that we are putting this kind of exposition into the public domain. And it's the best kind of public because it's our tribe, it's our friends, it's our wisdom keepers. And indeed, 6:30 p.m. tomorrow is the kickoff, closing ceremony.
Great. So, and that free energy device is called the Cutie Pie, right?
It is. A Cutie Pie stands for quantum technology and then the pi symbol, because it's working with those ratios and with those signatures. If you can hear in the background that wonderful screeching, that is Balinese jokers and priests at the temple down the road on their megaphones starting their own beautiful ceremonies, which will go on all night long. Just be warned.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a beautiful thing once you get used to it, but you have to learn to phase it out and just continue.
Right. Yeah. It's part of the beauty of this podcast and doing this as a traveling digital nomad is welcoming my listeners into the environments that we're in and bringing the world to them, so they don't necessarily have to buy the ticket to be here. They get a taste of it. But we do want people to come here. This is the first year of the New Earth Festival. It's the first gathering of the tribe. And hopefully it continues even after the festival now and for years to come, right?
Well, yes, in as much as that the Haven has been designed precisely as that ongoing kind of festival environment, even if it's not a festival per se, it's the environment that invites the application of art, beauty and consciousness as an ongoing unfoldment. And I think we've already set that precedent in the last, essentially the last 6 to 9 months. I mean, we've done a lot of events here since we launched the Haven. We have bi-monthly ecstatic dances. We've had big symposiums and conferences here. So every week is pretty much littered with some jewel or another. And that was always the idea, that we create a living environment and a built environment which just welcomes that constant kind of unfoldment of expression and art and bliss and
co-creation.
Always, of course. What else to say?
Right. And it's a New Earth Haven, right? So this is like an eco community.
No, it's well, it is in a sense, but a haven is distinct from a community, in the way that we've discussed community development within New Earth, whereupon a true 0 point New Earth community takes place on a piece of land which is not registered to the crown or the state, but is standing in absolute sovereignty. So those communities are the natural unfoldment that we'll see. The Haven is where we are beginning the kind of setting up flagships, exploring the dimension of lifestyle that we are introducing. But for instance, the land that we're on, that we have the festival on, is land that is title and deed held by myself and my land partners, right? So although we're not monetizing things per se, it is still indentured to the fiction or registered to the fiction of the state. And an ultimate New Earth community is a 0 point, is not owned by the fiction government or the municipality. But that's where we're moving to as a civilization. We're not quite there yet.
Right, we're working on it. Here we are all working on it, showing up to work on it together.
Exactly.
Very impressed with the programming and the speakers and the content and everything that's happening here and the quality of people who are answering the call to be here, which takes me to the notion of something you mentioned the other day, which is very much for me a mission with this podcast, is to be a clarion call to the rainbow warriors of the Hopi Prophecy. And you mentioned the Hopi Prophecy the other day. What is that? What is that about for you with this project?
Oh wow, it's everything. I'm not steeped in Hopi Prophecy, but I know that from when I first came into contact with Hopi and Hopi wisdom, for me it really spoke to the atom seed of what I would call the cosmogenesis of the human family. And the distinction that Hopi Prophecy draws when it speaks in terms of the red skins, the yellow skins, the white skins, and the black skins, and then you have that codified in their symbology and their totemism. So there seems to be a profound kind of genesis, a galactic genesis intelligence in Hopi Prophecy that I think we've probably only just scratched the surface of in the modern context, but I'm open to learning. I was speaking today to one of our friends who's very connected to the Hopi, and I asked her the question. I said, can you tell me whether Hopi Prophecy talks about us coming from a unified source and then becoming separate into red skin, yellow skin, black skin, white skin, or is it the opposite? Is it that we came from different constellations as different cosmogenetic parties and all came together to create a fusion of those different genomes into the unified field. And are we part of an experiment that is intending to unify all of the star people? You know, and she said, I don't know. I don't know if Hopi Prophecy speaks to this or that. Possibly it speaks to both, but anyone out there has the answer, let me know.
Fun questions to ask and explore. And yeah, explore as community, as conscious community here, and very much appreciate the community aspect that you're building here. And like I interviewed Jenna earlier, and we talked about a festival like this is basically sending up an antenna, and the people that need to be here are getting the message and showing up.
Well, let me bring it into scientific language. We're talking about phase coherence. We're talking about going into phase coherence and sending out the radiance, sending out the scalar waves, sending out the empathic waveforms from our active human hearts and minds, which acts at that subtle etheric level, quite literally affects the plane of the holonomic existence and radiates outward and connects and attunes to similar minds and hearts, and they feel and hear that clarion call, and almost as if it's magic are drawn to that space-time. So that is phase coherence and action amongst the social ecology of people of the world, and by God, we do represent that stuff. And yes, we are a living antenna, both individual and collective.
Right, exactly. And we on the surface, we call it magic, but it's actually science, as you say. Yeah, I love that. There are so many, this is so much bigger than the festival. It's so much bigger than New Earth Haven. You have so many outside projects outside of the festival and outside of this very property. Can you tell us a bit about what else you're working on?
I can, but they will all speak to the same thing. They'll all speak to the sovereign standing of living men and women of the living soil, and the need for us to simply remember that that's who and what we are, and that all the rest of it is just clever bullshit. So yes, we've set up an international court, an international tribunal, and yes, we have, you know, bishops and all sorts of important, powerful people on our commission, and we conduct, you know, our judicial commissions of inquiry, and you know, and all of that stuff. But that's games. The application of law is deception. It's games. We never forget that. So we've set up our own court and our own law commission and our own capacity to enforce, in a sense, natural justice. But and we are variously having successes there, but that must not ever detract from the fact that law and the business of law is a nonsense, like the business of economy and economics is a nonsense. How dare we reduce the beauty of the quantum universe down into totems of exchange on the palms of our hands, that we then buy and sell bullshit with one another. That is not who and what we are at our essence. We are immanent, ineffable, majestic, divine immortals. But that only comes about when we remember it and then embody it.
Right, beautiful. And events like this are tools and grounds for helping people remember, and all the programming here, and that, you know, people sit in the workshops and they hear the music and they do the ecstatic dance, and all of these are tools to help people remember.
Yes, indeed. And I'm not one for ecstatic dance, and I sit perplexed watching it. I'm one of those crazy old school guys that think that dancing is for beautiful women. Of course it's not. And I love Baryshnikov and, you know, but the application of classical dance. I've never personally been a dancer in the context of a festival or nightclubs and what have you. So I've always had a hard time getting to grips with it. Recently, but I totally get the element of it, of releasing that dervish spirit within and just completely unifying with Om, with Aum, with sound. So that much I do and have done for many years in the sanctity of my own symphony, but my symphony happens to be silence, which is why I chose, incidentally, to come here and live in the rice fields many years ago, was to be as quiet as possible. I love silence. But I'm beginning to see that ecstatic dance, in its essence, is the same thing as the still point that I seek from natural bliss.
Beautiful. And so as you talk about silence, the question comes up for me, is meditation a part of your personal practice? Yoga, meditation, where do you sit with
I've
that?
never meditated in my life, and nor will I ever meditate in my life. But my state of mindfulness, I believe, has reached a certain threshold whereupon the language that I hear people speaking to around meditation is something I absolutely relate to and understand. So my business of mindfulness is the same thing as mind emptiness in the meditative sense. And I know that that's true because I see the manifestation coming out of my mindfulness. But my mindfulness occurs in the sanctity of a lot of silence and stillness. I can't bear, I have a sort of pathological aversion to crying babies and meowing cats and squawking parrots and things, much as they're beautiful in and of themselves. It's hardwired into me that silence is the thing that I crave more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's because in that silence I tend to become totally full as a vessel of creative expression and consciousness expansiveness. And then I start to see and really begin to ideate in a way that I know I can now manifest something. But when there's noise, it jars me and it closes down that faculty in me. So I'm just one of those people that operates in a meditative state by being the application of mindfulness.
Beautiful. And is it an open invitation, would you say, to people coming here and investing in one of these biodomes? I saw a flyer sitting around that we're sitting in one of the biodomes right now, which are incredible, and the details, by the way, the bioarchitecture and the crystals that you're putting in the plates that you're serving the organic food in the restaurant. I mean, there's so much thoughtfulness and eco-mindfulness here. What's the invitation to expand the community? Is there an opportunity for people to come in and invest by purchasing one of these?
There's a huge opportunity. I'm just not the man to really speak to it, but I'll tell you what I do know. We've got a very brilliant sales and marketing team, and they're all people very connected to the culture and the ecology of what we're doing. And what we're not seeking to do is to make money and build up a bank balance. What I would like to do is create a sustainable infrastructure where it's not being financed in a kind of false way. Meaning to say, I don't want to have to be selling receipts to events in order to pay the bills.
Right.
I would very much like, and or going into debt myself personally to continue to effectively support the vision, because that's boring. Ultimately, and for sure within 6 to 9 months from now, we will be in that situation where we have a number of people keying in with micro investments into their own fractal of this, and that then will start to become something of what you would call an ecological community. But it won't be a New Earth sovereign community, because it'll still be people coming, investing in a biodome or a series of biodomes which will serve them as a place to live or holiday in, and when they're not living or holidaying in it, it'll be undertaken by the trust to put out as part of our visitors coming in and renting. And then investors will make some kind of return on that. That much I do know.
Okay. And a couple of things that you've mentioned over the last few days that have caught my attention. The gift economy is one. Do you want to go into a bit of what that's about and what the vision is around that and the aspiration?
It's too big a subject, I think, for me to do any justice to it in a fairly short interview. So I don't particularly want to get into that, except to say that the business of contributing one's time, one's energy, one's purpose, one's mission, one's creativity toward a collective meme like this is something which pays immediate dividends. You can see that by simply spending a day here, an evening here, a night here. So it's a very powerful thing, the business of engaging that contributionist exchange. It's an experiment, and it's a social experiment which is never reaching any finite position. So we don't know where it takes us. We'll find out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful aspiration to move us towards a gift economy, I'd say. You're aware we have a new president in the United States. You mentioned him the other day and his position on energy. The question I want to ask you in regards to the United States and the globe and the world in general is that the notion of borders. You were talking about no borders the other day. This is something that I think about a lot, and we had a situation in the United States recently where the borders were closed to many countries. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, borders are the ultimate definition of division, divisiveness. of creating a false construct, a false definition of reality. And that's proven out very simply by withdrawing yourself from the plane of the earth and seeing the earth topographically from the sky, and seeing that all the walls and bridges and roads that we choose to build ultimately disappear into nothingness. And there is simply a beautiful big jewel of Gaia that's winking at us. And we come closer down to the temporal plane, we stand on it and stake flags in the ground and try to own and control and manipulate resources and spaces. And we're just fools doing that. But the lines that we draw on the surface of the earth are a reflection directly of the lines that we carve up our inner landscape. And we prevent unification with ourselves. So the more I acknowledge and accredit and participate in the false light matrix, so to speak, and in the definitions, the borders, the more I am defining myself as being separated from source. And that ultimately is a folly which, as I awaken, I realize that. And so I start to relinquish and release and revoke those false contracts and step out of them. And it is just a question of stepping out of them.
Beautiful. Full agreement here. Creative expansion is something that you mentioned on the first day. Can you expand a bit more on the mission or the grand vision of New Earth?
Well, consciousness in action is the kind of trigger word that I'm mostly coming back to nowadays, because consciousness in action is by definition creative. It creates in its wake abundance and prosperity, because it's keyed into the quantum field, into the so-called feminized aspect of the holonomic reality. It is not rigid and fixed and drawing straight lines on the bowels of the earth, and it's not engaged in the business of parasiting off others or off the earth in the way that our false civilizational matrix is based entirely on parasiting the bowels of the earth, raping the womb of Gaia, so to speak, stealing the resources from her womb, the plasma, the blood, the oil, the diesel, the petroleum, hacking down the rainforests and combusting all of that stuff into false light, utility, electricity, or nuclear, power. But either way, it's all about creating false light, because electricity in the normal sense is the fallen light of Atlantis that we're still harnessing. It's entropic, it's dangerous, it'll shock you and kill you if you touch it. So this is not our true nature. Our true nature is when we enter the 0 point and tap into the quantum field and invoke, induce through that 0 point our highest expression, which is vibral light. It's the light that emanates from source. That's free, it's limitless, it's abundant, it's prosperous, and it also heals because it's life-affirming fractality. It's in coherence with itself, as opposed to blowing up coal and gas and thermonuclear energetics, where you are creating mutant nested ethers which actually deplete and kill and maim. So it's how we choose to apply our civilization. Unfortunately, we've been so mind-fucked into believing that we have to go to work to do a job, to pay the man, to pay the bills.
Right.
That's part of the entropic parasitic cycle. That's a self-cannibalizing cycle. But I'm the one to say, as you are the one to recognize by being here, that it is not that, and that we have technologies and healing modalities and environmental remediation capacity to be able to put a magic wand over pretty much everything, including the depleted uranium, half-life of depleted uranium, which we're told will last 500,000 years. Nonsense. You can remediate Fukushima in less than 10 minutes using phase conjugation technologies, which scientists today are trying to get out into the mainstream. My own foundation have been involved in trying to bring some of those technologies to governments and have failed variously. But the Cutie Pie tech that energy system that we are about to unleash is perfect representative of that feminine, vibral, life-affirming fractal coding that is coming into the world at this time, because now is the time The elevation of collective consciousness and planetary consciousness is now at a point where it is actually invoking those higher etheric forms into the temporal realm. Whereas 100 years ago, 300 years ago, it was too dense, in a sense, to allow for those forms to emerge. So the beautiful paradox is that although we're seeing ritual sacrifice and Satanism and pedophile rings and war and genocide and disease and poverty on a level that we've never seen before, actually that's a good sign. It means that the mask is falling and that we're actually seeing the underbelly of our civilizational galactic sleep. And in so seeing it, you and I can cast light upon it and enlighten it. And that's exactly the process that's happening.
Beautiful. Would you say that we're at a tipping point of the awakening? Enough people are awakening on the planet now. The collective consciousness is getting to the point where it's about to tip and we're going to really move into the new earth.
I would hazard to suggest that it tipped some time ago and that we are still living in the shadow of time. But actually the transition, the new paradigm, the celestial matrix, however you want to coin it, has already emerged and is staring you and I in the face right here, right now.
There's a lot of evidence of it here in New Earth, New Earth Haven. Would you equate the work that you're doing here as spiritual activism?
I wouldn't, because spirituality, spiritualization, and spiritus is all stuff that is ultimately evoked also through the Roman Catholic Church, and all that is dark and nefarious and egregious about how we describe our highest expression. So I'm not attuned to even the notion of spirituality, but of course it's a word that we're somewhat forced to use. I would prefer to think in terms of complete presence of mind, being absolutely present and mindful in the now, where I begin to recognize that this living moment, this flame that you and I are engaged in right now, is the single most important flame of my entire expression. There is no question more important than the one you just asked me. And there is no answer more important than the one I'm giving to you. That is owning the now and being fully present and actualized in the now. That's where we gift pure truth to one another. I don't ever want to step outside of that flame.
Great answer. What is your wish for the world?
I have no wishes. I have no desires in that sense, nor do I want them. And if you ever hear me express a wish, take me out the back and beat me to death. And the reason why I say that, with some humor, is that, and I just invite, I'm not being a smart ass, but what I'm inviting in my state of mindfulness is for us to consider the dangers of wishful thinking, and for us to consider the dangers of having any kind of desire or any kind of faith or any kind of trust. I do not want to trust in anything. I do not want to have faith in anything, because I don't want to speculate. I want to be here now, and I want to engage that flame of pure truth, because in so doing I engage my supernature, and that is the very thing that enables me to manifest the change. It's as simple as that. But once I take away from the atom seed of self here now and start to wish or pray or desire or have faith in or trust in, I am externalizing again that pure truth. Do you get me?
Sure.
And moving towards an object. That's called idolatry. And that is always civilizationally the thing we fall into. And our language is the thing that we need to watch most closely. Sorry for sounding like a preacher, but for me this is an exact science.
Yeah, interesting. So what is sovereignty, and why is that such a big piece of the conversation here?
Because sovereignty is, by definition, the closest name that we can give to the flame of the I am, when our being and our doing become exactly the same quanta. So that's complete synthesis and symbiosis of the duality that we inhabit, and recognizing that so long as we place our attention in either the Democrat or the Republican, either the Shiva or the Shakti, either the lunacy or the solar principle, it doesn't matter. When we're projecting to one aspect of duality or another, we are not in synthesis. And if we're not in synthesis, we are not engaging our true life force. We are trapped in the parasitic and entropic universe or paradigm if we are not engaged in that sovereign flame. So the sovereign flame, in simple terms, is the thing that ignites you into becoming phase coherent with supernature. And in so doing, you draw upon that supernature, which is a limitless, abundant source of energy. That is life force in its truest expression. And there is a limitless amount of it. And when we truly get to that point, individually and collectively, then the immortal paradigm returns. Death, decay, and entropy are illicit, illegal, and they are actually not supposed to be part of our matrix or of our hologram. But for a period of time, quote unquote, we clearly chose as a sentient species to engage in the galactic sleep cycle in order to learn, possibly in order to anchor lower realms of expression on that journey to the underworld, back toward the light. And that's where each of us become the messianic principle. Each of us become the Christos. Each of us become the Bodhisattva.
Yeah, the Bodhisattva. So on that note, for the people that are listening to this and resonating with this message and vision and notion of community, and what's the best way for people to get involved, to get engaged in this vision?
By doing so, there are enough websites and things out there for people to attune to and move toward. But I have no prognosis or diagnostic. It's really just a question of attuning. We've got so much media stuff out there. We have the NewEarth University, which is thriving, and we've got havens and community prospects really pretty much all around the world.
Globally, right?
Yeah, and it's just a question of people stepping into that flame again and making that determination. What I don't want to do or to see is to see the name or the brand NewEarth in a few years' time from now. I don't even want to hear that name. This is just a put up as a meme to bring together and cohere our flames together. But I don't want a brand, and I don't want to see a logo in a few years from now, because that will demarcate an abject failure of this exercise.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. So this is just the launch event, the seed, the gathering of the tribe.
Yes, it is. The ignition of a flame, a flame which is anchored in righteousness, in right-mindedness, and in consciousness and action. And if we screw up along the way, we screw up along the way. Are we going to beat ourselves to death? Hell no. Am I going to judge you for it? Hell no. But we will stand up, we will dust ourselves down, and we will continue to stand in that flame.
Thank you so much, Sacha. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for holding this space.
Great pleasure.
Namaste.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you. Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show, and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.